I think we should start. Is it okay, Professor Ahmed?
Yeah, let's start.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome on behalf of YPS, Young Professional Society, and our collaborators, STEM Matters, who are based in the United States. Welcome to our global webinar weekly programs. So we've been having these on a weekly basis, and we have different professionals from different backgrounds who come in and give some advice and provide some professional advice for our youngsters. And this is the first time that we are interviewing a politician. Now, YPS is a non-political and a non-religious organization. We're secular. However, one of the pillars that YPS works under is leadership. And today we have with us Afzal Khan, or shall I say Dr. Afzal Khan, who is the shadow deputy leader of the House of Commons. And Dr. Afzal will be speaking about his experiences in life and also giving us the youngsters some advice, those youngsters who want to enter into the politics profession. And we are quite pleased to be collaborating with the STEM Matters, who are based in Texas in the United States. So hopefully those people, this webinar is being live streamed on Facebook. So hopefully through STEM Matters, we'll have some folks joining us from the US. So if you're joining us from the US, welcome. Good afternoon. I know you're 6-8 hours behind us. So those people who are joining us on Facebook, if I can ask you one thing before we get on with the interview, is if you could just please share the live stream onto your timeline so that more people, those who are not able to watch it, we reach out to more and maximize our reach. So if you could do that, that would be great. Now, before we get on with our interview with Dr. Afzal, I would just like to give you a background onto YPS, what we're about, and why we're hosting such webinars. Now, Young Professional Society, we work under 3 pillars: leadership, communication, and innovation. So all these programs that we've been running fall under these 3 pillars. And these are some of the functions that we carry out. All these activities that we do actually fall under the 3 pillars. And we're trying to help the youth, the young people, to develop personal and professional development, and also to help them with the soft skills so that they become better successful professionals in their working life. So, and we work with a number of organizations, and these are some of the ones that you can see. Again, all the collaborations that we do are focused under leadership, innovation, and good communication. And you can find more information about what we do and what we're about. You know, we have a website that you could go. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and those who want to join the WhatsApp group, we do have one. There's a QR code here, which you can see if you can reach us from there. If not, there's a number here, WhatsApp number that you can contact us. Those who want to join the WhatsApp group, what I will do now is I'm going to pass on to, can I please ask people to mute the mics, please? Yeah, I think somebody has the mic on. So what we will do is that I'm going to be acting as an admin, and I will come in and ask some questions as well to Dr. Afzal. But I'm going to pass on to Professor Waqar Ahmed, who's the president of the YPS, and he's also based at the University of Lincoln, who will conduct this interview. And then also we have with us Councillor Shaukat Ali, who's from the Manchester City Council, who will also be questioning Afzal Khan. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass on to Professor Ahmed.
Good afternoon. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to this special interview. I am delighted and honored to be interviewing someone that I have admired for a long time. We don't have enough time to go through all his achievements, so I'm going to give you a brief bio, a short introduction to Dr. Afzal Khan. Afzal Khan was elected as a Labour MP for Gorton in 2017 and was re-elected in 2019. Afzal served as a shadow minister for immigration between 2017 to 2019 and shadow foreign office minister 2019 to 2020. When Sir Keir Starmer became leader of the Labour Party, he was appointed as the shadow deputy leader in the House of Commons. He is also a vice chair of several all-party parliamentary groups, including the British Muslims, Adult Social Care, Pakistan, Hajj, Umrah, Greater Manchester and Poverty, parliamentary chair of Labour Muslim Network, and also APPG, Trade and Tourism, Pakistan and UK. Now, Afzal was born in Pakistan and moved to the UK in 1971 when he was adopted out of poverty as a child. He worked as a labourer in a cotton mill, a bus driver, and a Greater Manchester police officer before qualifying as a solicitor and becoming a partner at his own law firm. In 2000, he was elected to the Manchester City Council, rising to become the first Asian Lord Mayor of the city, receiving the Co-op Mayor of the Year award, a first for Manchester, and was later a member of the council's executive. Prior to being elected as a member of Parliament, Afzal was a member of the European Parliament for North West England, served as Vice President of Security and Defence between 2014 and 2017. In 2008, Afzal was awarded a CBE for his work on community cohesion, interfaith and local government. In March of 2018, he was awarded the Star-e-Qaid-e-Azam by President Mamnoon Hussain, the highest civil honor, recognizes his contribution to the well-being of the people of Pakistan, particularly in the diaspora and to Pakistani-British relations. He holds an honorary doctorate from the Government College, University in Lahore, and Mirpur University of Science and Technology. Dr. Afzal Khan, welcome to YPS, and it's a privilege to have you here. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, salam. Can I say it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the wonderful work you are doing for the young professionals.
Okay, so the format of the interview, I'm going to lead the questions, and I'm going to ask our listeners to type in the questions in the chat, and we'll take them as they come. Okay, so can I ask you, start off with your early childhood? Obviously, when you're a child, your brain is highly malleable and can be shaped in the first few years of a person's life. Can you describe what your early life was like in Pakistan? What was it like growing up in Pakistan?
Well, I suppose my life earlier, like most people in Pakistan, was from a village, living in a sort of extended family system, which allowed me the benefit of having lots of family members, uncle, aunts, grandparents. And then I suppose the other difference is my father worked in Pakistan Army, so he was mostly away. As I was like a few years older, say around 10 years old, then I was able to go and see him there as well. That must have been highlight of my life at that time, you know, visiting different cities, different places that he was posted, all the way from Quetta to Lahore and more closely to Jhelum as well, of course. So that's sort of routine life, I would say. Most young people I had in Pakistan.
And do you think because your father was in the army that you got good discipline that served you later in your life?
Well, he certainly was disciplined, I'll tell you that. Most army people, I think, they're ingrained with discipline idea. Yeah, I suppose at the time, I felt scared a little bit more than anything else. I remember when I reflect now, I think it was a really good thing that he used to do. He used to take me out for a walk. And I used to dread it at the time, because I know when you go for a walk with your dad, then he'll be talking about things and asking things. But now when I think about it, I thought actually in a way, he was helping to shape me and to develop me. So in a sense, it did me no harm. But at the time, I tell you, I used to dread it.
So apart from your father, were there any other early influences on your life, and what were the challenges and success that have shaped you early on?
I would say I was close to my dadi, my grandma. She was an amazing woman. By this stage, I think it's only 3, 4, my granddad had died. So she lived virtually with us, but with a separation in a sense. She had another part of the house which was just hers. So I used to end up sort of spending time with her, particularly at night, being able to go and sleep with her. And what was good about her was, of course, the experience of life that she had. But secondly, she was an amazingly excellent cook. Even of the basic dish, it would be so nice. So I used to love that you get treated, when you go and see your grandma. So that I would say I was close to her, and that probably shaped my life as well. And then I think the other probably thing which happened to me, which was slightly different than most people, because my father was in the army, and then you were entitled to go to these depots where you could get food, your entitlement. So I had sort of responsibility at a very young age to go to the army depot and sort of collect different needs for the family for a month. And I think when I think about it again now, I thought, wow, at around 10-year-old, having that responsibility to doing the shopping for a whole month for the whole family, that must have helped me as well, actually.
That's wonderful. I mean, one of the things my mother always said to me when I came home with a crappy grade at school, he'd always say, "Don't worry, son, next time you're going to come top." And that confidence and that faith that parents have in the child was very important to me, and I'm sure it was important to you, their influence and how they shaped your life.
Yeah, it was. And I think my father probably, like you said, not only on the discipline point of view, but he also on the education side, he also understood the importance of it and in a way pushed us. So whenever he was back home from army, there's a daily dosage now of education at night as well with him. And then a good ticking off as well if you haven't done your homework.
So you came to UK as a teenager. How did it feel? Describe your feelings and experiences coming to a foreign country and your parents still being in Pakistan. What was that like?
I think at the time, it was sort of mixed feelings, almost a little bit excitement that you're going to England. You're going to get a chance to fly. It's very unusual, I would say. And then once you get here, then the reality hits you. And then I think that's not easy. It was tough. Your whole emotions are all over the place. So I think I went through those difficult years. Didn't manage to settle down quite well. I think the system they had here in education was a bit funny as well. What they used to do, I came to Pendle, Nelson, small sort of villages around that area. And what they used to do is collect all the people who were sort of coming from abroad and take these young children to a separate school, which were designated simply to focus on your basic English and maths and everything else. And I suppose the difficulty we would have is, one, we were all at a different levels, different ages. I was, for example, I started education in secondary school in second year. So whole of my primary education is missing. Part of my secondary is missing. And lots of things, when you're born and brought up here, you pick up automatically. You don't even think about it, you know about it. But if it's all missing, then in a way, it does have an impact. And then when they have all the people who don't speak English, well, guess what? They would then speak in their own language, because that's what you've done. You put them all together. So I didn't think that was productive. And then you spend half a day in that school. And then the second half of the day, you come to your main school. Again, so you're in a no man's land in that sense. So I think reflecting on it, I don't think it was a brilliant idea. I think I would have preferred to be actually kept within the same school and not to be separated. And I may pick the English bit better and quicker.
And in them years, what were your main kind of ambitions, or what was your vision like for the future?
I don't think I had much of ambition, if I'm honest. I felt, I suppose, because of this whole missing of education, then I felt, well, I'm not going to do well. And some of the reports didn't help with that, the great predictions of what you'll do. So I virtually felt that it was just a waste of time even sitting the exams. Because if I'm not going to pass, what's the point? So that sort of attitude took me through to the age of 16, where I didn't even sit for exams. And now reflecting on it, I usually make a joke of it and I say, well, I left school with the 9 no levels. I didn't sit any exams. So then I suppose the only point is I want to be grown up and I want to work and I want to earn money. Simple as that. And in that context, when I was 16, like most of the people in that part of the world, in Pendle, there was a major firm with the mill, Smith and Nephew. Almost everybody, that's where you went. And myself too, I started my work at 16 in a cotton mill in Smith and Nephew, and I was a laborer. Spent some time there, and then I moved on to become a battery filler, and then a bit longer, then I was sort of trained to become a weaver. So that's how my work started in working life.
I remember when I used to come to the shop on Cheetham Road where you used to work with my mum and sometimes my dad, and they always kind of admired you and loved you. Did you learn a lot about communication when you were working in that shop, or where did you learn?
Yeah, I worked there. It was called Al Badr Food Store, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I did, and I worked there, serving on the till. But I also trained myself, became a butcher as well. For a year or so, I was a butcher. So if anybody needs some meat cutting, I can still do it. But I think my real change came from the mill side. When I was over 18, I started doing nights because doing nights, you would earn more money. I remember one night, I did my whole shift, finished 6 o'clock, and then I thought I was walking back home, and it was like a hill and a valley, and the mill itself is on the lower ground. So you walk up a hill. So when I walked about halfway up, and then I could see, suddenly I turned around, looked back, and I could see the whole mill, the whole roof of that mill. And I don't know what happened, but just at that moment, this thought came into my head that, do you want to spend the rest of your life working in this cotton mill? And I think any of your viewers who may have ever visited a mill or worked in a mill, you'll know it's not a good place. The whole atmosphere there, the mills, the looms, the dampness, the noise level, all sorts of pollutions you can think of, it will be there. And the answers are really straightforward, and that was no. But then the difficult question comes after, well, if it's no here, what do you do? And this then, after a bit of thinking, I realized actually how important education is. It's this then I knew that if I want to be successful, if I want to get somewhere with a better job, then one of the things I would have to do is go back in education. So then I went through a phase for a number of years where I would work so I could earn some money, help my family, support them, and at the same time, support myself and then do next stage. So I did my O levels, then A levels like that. And then also, of course, I joined the police. So I've been a bus driver as well. I've worked as a taxi driver, you name it. I've done about a dozen different jobs. But linked with it has been also the education side. So it was through the long, hard slog, really, that I went through education. And then ultimately, I joined the police. I thought that was interesting, really, for me personally. And then, of course, law and everything else.
Most of us, what we try to do now that we've done well, in the UK, we try to protect our children. We don't want them to be hurt. They don't have any challenges. Give them everything they want. And I was driven by the pain of working in the shop or working in a factory. And I thought, I don't ever want to do this. How important do you think it is for children to go through a little bit of hardship?
Yeah, I think the key point I would say is that what you don't want to do is bring up your children in a manner where they have no appreciation. It's about making sure they appreciate things and they have right values, which is important. So in that sense, really working closely with your children, giving them more time, and don't just think of as items, that I'll buy you a car, I'll buy you this, actually give them some of the strong values. That will put them in a better shape.
When you joined the police force, I remember in them days, hardly anybody used to be in the police force from the Asian community. So you were one of the pioneers in the police force. What was it like being like an odd one out in the police force?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the first point was, why did I choose to be going to the police force? I think for a very early age in my life, I realized one thing: Britain is our home. And then I also realized that if this is our home, then it's important that we are part and parcel of the society. We get involved with different walks of life. And for a long time, we've had this issue with police, that the relationship between the BME community and the police are not good. The question of racism and all that. So I felt, you can't just complain about things. You need to get involved. And that's one of the best ways of changing things. So this is what motivated me to join the police. And when I joined the police, again, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I didn't do long service. I just did about just under 3 years. But it was enough, I thought, for me personally. It gave me a really good experience of life. In a way, when you are a police officer, you are on the sharp end of things, what's happening. So it really gives you a good experience. I felt it also gave me confidence. And on the issue of racism, I mean, I think it's a difficult question in a sense. Lots of, as your academic background, there's a lot of research available which shows that there is an issue. There is the question of institutionalized racism as well with the police, as well as other institutions. But what I will say is to you is that I remember, having some police officers who were basically, I would say, not good mannered. And I used to say to myself, when we were working with them together as a colleague, that I would hate to meet them as a member of public. So you have that element in the police as well. And then I think there are also large chunk who are actually good, upstanding, good citizens. They do that bit. And then I think it also depends on your attitude. How do you manage this? How do you relate to others? And I think you can handle situation in a different way. Broadly speaking, I did not have any difficulties either within the police force or as a police officer myself from the public. I would say generally, people were absolutely fine. I wouldn't tell anyone not to join the police. I would say, if you want to join the police, go ahead. I, in fact, would go a step further. Some of our young people should actually go and try it. And if they don't like it, after 2 years, leave it. There's no problem. But what you will gain in that 2 years will be a huge sort of strength to your rest of life. And that, I think, is something worth thinking about. So broadly speaking, I think I had a good experience. My own chief superintendent, when I decided to leave, he called me in and he said, Afzal, you're making a big mistake leaving the police force. Don't leave the police force. You've got a great future in the police. And I remember looking at him and I said, well, I'll live with my mistake. So I then left, and that's when I did my law, and then I qualified. And when I was qualified solicitor, I actually went back to see the chief superintendent. He was really nice. So he gave me coffee, biscuits, we had a chat. And then I brought this point up with him, when he said, you're making a big mistake. So I said, his name was Willie Elder. And I said, sir, you remember you mentioned this to me, that I'm making a big mistake. And he looked at me, he said, yes. And then he had a little smile on his face. I said, look, here I am. I'm a qualified solicitor. I earn more than what you earn. I don't do any night shift, and I don't take any orders. And he laughed and he said, well done.
That's wonderful.
Right. Dr. Waqar, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may, I was just enjoying the conversation with the brother Afzal. Fascinating, a beginning. Really, you took me to my childhood. I had a similar journey. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Waqar and Dr. Nisar Ali for wonderful work they are doing for our youngsters, our future. And inshallah, I think our youngster have a bright future. Coming back to your story, I was very fascinated listening to your story, and really your work and your achievement speaks for itself. Your commitment, your hard work. As someone said that if you give me if you give me educated mother, I will give you educated nation. And in your circumstances, I would say that it was our sister, your wife. I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, as soon as you was married, then you went back into the education, and you never looked back after. And I think without her push and encouragement, probably your commitment obviously played a major part, but your support of our sister was very, very important. So if you can elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you're right in the sense that early ages, like my mother never went to a school. But I think what you can't take away from your mother's is experience of life, education of life. I honestly think my mother was highly intelligent, and me and my wife usually joke about this. And we say, had she been to school or college or university, wow, she would have been amazing. She was so sharp, yeah. She was capable. She could sort of look at me and know exactly where I am and how I am feeling. So that was my mother, yeah. On my wife, look, I think probably what's true is that I got married very young, and then she was doing really well in education. And then we basically had a chat about this. And this is why I think this idea of your partner is really important. If you have a good partner, Quran says then that they are your committed partners. Yeah. So we basically worked out what was the best thing to do for ourselves. And in that sense, because she was ahead of me, she was doing really well in education. And then I decided to support her so that she could finish her education, which she did. She ultimately qualified as a dentist. And once she qualified as a dentist, then we could have an income coming in to support the family. And this is when I then went on and did my law degree. So we basically supported one another. I supported her first, and she did a degree. And once she qualified, she then worked. And then she's been amazing. She supported me, and then I was able to go and get education. It's that partnership which actually took us there.
Our community encourages people to study even before a child is born. They think, yeah, my kid is going to be a doctor, or they're going to be a dentist, or maybe pharmacist. And your wife was is a dentist, and you could have done the same thing and built a huge practice in Cheetah Mill. What prompted you to study law?
I suppose most likely the reasoning behind it is that I was in the police. So from the police, so it's also almost seems natural that you go into law, that you're also part of a law system. You're trying to implement a law as a police officer. Yeah. So it's a natural next step. And then second reason may well be is I did not have science-based A-levels. So I wouldn't probably get an entry, whereas she did. So I think that's how I ended up in law. Probably, I think the influence of the police. it then seemed natural for me to sort of step into the law degree.
So at that time, obviously you had a family and you were working and studying and doing many things at the same time. How did you balance your work and family and study? I mean, often it's a challenge for many of us.
It is, and again, if I'm honest, it still is. So I suppose I took some advice on this, and one of the persons who gave me a brilliant, simple advice, and that I would say applies to everyone. And so I said to him, look, this is exactly the way you put the question to me, how do you manage this? Yeah. And he said, have you ever ridden a bike? I said, yeah. He said, well, that's the art. You got to keep balancing. You got to keep balancing, and that's how you stay straight. So I think in life, with all these pressures, different types of pressures which we all have, what we've got to do is like riding a bike. You got to keep your balance. You got to keep trying to adjust your balance so your balance is right. And that's the only way. It's not easy. It's really difficult in life because you may have interest in one thing, or there's more pressure from one thing, and you will lose. But ultimately, a good person must hold a balance in life, and that's what is important.
So after you finished your law degree, you joined a successful firm as a partner and could have made loads of money and, of course, great deal of respect, luxurious lifestyles. What went wrong or what went right, and why did you choose politics to enter?
I don't think anything went wrong, but I think, yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? Journey of life. What actually key thing which happened, there are probably two things. So the first one is I went to a conference in Istanbul. What they were doing was they were doing a big celebration of Fatah Istanbul. And what they had done was they had invited people from different parts of the Muslim world. And I was involved with some major organizations in the UK at the time doing community work. So I had an invitation as well. So I went there, and there we were during the time of Arbakan. We were sitting in this nice posh hotel in Istanbul, and then the discussion started. And they suddenly felt that, look, we have a large number of Muslims who live in Britain, and Britain is their home, and they really need to be engaged in politics. And then this discussion sort of evolved and then ended up with me. And they all looked at me and they said, you should do it. And I laughed at them. I genuinely thought, wow, they're crazy. And I said to them, you really have picked the right person, haven't you? I don't even bother even giving a vote to anyone. I've never voted in Britain. And you are saying I should be involved in politics in Britain. And they all said, no, actually, it's important and we should be engaged in politics. So I said, okay, listen, I respect you all. All I'm going to say to you is I'm listening to you. I'm just going to think about it. I'm not going to say yes to you. So that's how I left the Turkey and then came back here and then started thinking about it. And then I couldn't make my mind up. And then what I did was I decided to identify 4 people who I thought were sort of individuals who actually understood who we are, what we are, and what are our challenges, where do we need to go, who are basically a leadership material. And 2 of them were actually from Manchester. One of them was Kamar Zaman Azmi Saab, and the other one was Sayyid Sharif Ahmed. They're both sort of high-level caliber religious imams, trained from top-notch schools from Indian subcontinent. And then the third one was Hashi Faruqi, who was an editor of Impact. It was a magazine which looked at current affairs and depth. So he was based in London, so I went to see him as well. And then the fourth one was Professor Khurshid Ahmed from Leicester. And they were all very capable, competent individuals. And interestingly, all of them said to me, actually, what these guys were saying to you is right. We should be involved. And interestingly, Professor Khurshid, he said, not only we should be involved, in his opinion, we should have been involved 20 years ago. So that really sort of struck me deep. And then I started thinking deeply. And then I saw some of the situation in Manchester and the current situation in Cheetham Hill. And I wasn't quite satisfied with what was happening here politically. So the two combined ultimately sort of took me to a place which I decided, right, I'm going to get involved in politics. And I remember to this day, then I having a meeting with my partners. We had a nice firm with two branches, Bolton and Manchester. We had probably 30, 40 people employed, doing, like you said, earning reasonably good money. So I said to my partners, this is it for me. I just about become a partner after this long struggle. And then within 6 months or so, I'm saying, thank you, hands up, I'm moving on. So Mr. Singh was actually really interesting. He looked at me and he said, I really admire what you're going to do. And I wish I had the courage to do what you're doing. And Mr. Hussain looked at me and he said, you are bloody mental. He said, what are you doing? You know, you got a good place, you got a good position as a partner. There are 100,000 people in Manchester who would love to be in your shoes. And you're throwing all this away for what? You don't know whether you'll be even elected. And even if you get elected, you don't know whether you'll be re-elected. So you're a mental. But my mind was made, and this is it. It's history after that. You know, I stood, and then in 2000, I became a councillor from Cheetham Hill.
Most of us, we want to stay in our comfort zone and just do things with, build our career logically in a manner. So what was your initial vision for entering the politics? Weren't you scared? Did you think you're going to be successful when you started off? What were your thoughts and feelings at that time?
I don't think I was scared, to be honest. I had deep reservations in the line of what Mr. Hussain had said to me. You know, there's no guarantee and everything. And by this stage, I had 3 children, and they were young children. So, you know, because if you don't have the security, what happens? So I was struggling to make my mind up. And this is where my wife kicks in now. You know, she was amazing. After about 2-3 months of thinking, I couldn't make my mind up. I was still, you know, struggling. So I spoke to her and I said, look, I've been struggling for the last 2-3 months with this issue. And I don't know, you know, what to do. My heart is pulling me in one direction and my mind is not sure. And she was so brilliant, you know, she came straight away and she said, take the money out of this equation and then think. And once she said that, suddenly this whole burden which I felt on my shoulders went. And it became so clear for me. And I was then kicking myself. Why was I struggling for 3 months? She just done it in a second. So that's what took me then to politics, I think.
Okay, so when you decided to go into politics, was the aim that you want to go at the councillor level? I know ultimately, you know, you progressed and went to the European Parliament and now in the House of Commons. But at that time, you know, when you left the police force and you were a partner, and was it just sort of councillor level or you had a bigger vision?
If I'm honest, even now, I don't have vision like that. I don't look at things in a positions perspective. I went into it because I felt that there was a need. Same as I joined the police, I felt there was a need. And then what motivated me, I would say, is my religion. What I'd learned was that the best among humanity are those who bring benefit to others. And there's another beautiful saying of the Prophet Muhammad, and he said, a person whose 2 days are the same are in state of loss. So you're in a state of loss if you're just staying still. So these 2 things, I think, have been deep with me, and they have sort of guided my journey. And I also remember reading about Malcolm X, Malk Shabazz. You know, he said something which I think is really powerful. He said, if you're not around the table, then you're on the menu. That's interesting. Yeah. So I have been pushed like that, not in the sense I want to be an MP. or I want to be a minister or anything. That's not. I always think whatever is willed for me, whatever position I have, I will do my best to serve. So it's that which drives me.
Right. Shall if I may interrupt and carry on from there, and I was privileged to be your ward colleague when I became a councillor in 2012. I can say that the hard work, your hard work, paid for me. I still remember when it was my first election, and you was really pushing me day in, day out, and then when I became a councillor and you was an executive member in the Manchester City Council, I learned a lot from you. Then you made your mind to what made you to think that you want to be a MEP, and after that, your contribution as an MEP. I know that you've been involved in a lot of things. So if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think from the council perspective, so I was engaged with doing lots of different things. And then the next key point which came was actually Lord Mayor. That I thought was interesting for me as a jump. I wasn't sure, we never had an Asian, Muslim, Pakistani, anyone has ever been a Lord Mayor of such a major city, in Manchester. So I was interested in sort of being engaged in that position. And I would remember going to see Sir Richard Lees. And I said, look, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And he said, oh, it's a great idea. And I said, will you be supporting me? And he said, yeah, I'll support you. And then I remember asking him, do you think I'm going to win? And he turned around and he said, no, you're not going to win. So that was interesting for me. So I thought, hold on a minute. If I'm not going to win, what's the point? And I think this is a lesson for the young people here as well, that actually, in life, if you don't take the risk, well, you're not going to succeed, are you? You're going to stay where you are. You've got to be able to take the risk. And in this case, clearly somebody important, influential, who understood the system, he said to me, I'm going to lose. But then I thought about it and I said, so what if I'm going to lose? At least I'm going to learn something from this process. So that's the attitude which then I went back and I told him, I said, well, thank you for your advice, but I'm going to run for it. And I ran for it. And guess what? On the election night, when they counted the votes, I actually won. So if I had listened to the advice which said I'm going to lose, and if I said to myself, well, look, if you're going to lose, what's the point doing it? Which I had done in education, because I didn't even bother sitting my exams at the school because I thought I'm going to lose. Then I paid the price in the long term, how I came back to education. But here I didn't. I took the risk, but then I worked hard and then I won. And when I won, it was an amazing, first time we had somebody, and then I did a reasonably good job. I made so many different records. I was a Lord Mayor. I was made Mayor of the Year. And that opened me, one of the themes of the work which I did was about community cohesion. And this is what took me to two main organizations which operate even today. That is Hope Not Hate and United Against Fascism. Both of these organizations work against racism. So I was heavily involved with the work in the Northwest and that part of the country wide as well against racism. And if you remember, some of your viewers, well, in 2009, we had Nick Griffin, the leader of the British National Party, who was elected to represent us in the European Parliament. And that really hurt me. Every time he spoke in the European Parliament, I felt, how come we've got somebody like this who's a bigoted, who's a Islamophobe, every time he's attacking Muslims? Why are we tolerating somebody like this? So that's what motivated me then to stand against him, to make sure that he doesn't get elected. And I feel, one of the best things I've done is exactly that, trying to stand against him and then to be successful in defeating him. Because I remember in 2014, he sent a letter, a leaflet to every single house in the Northwest. And what he had put in that message was that 8 people are going to be elected in the Northwest. The big party is going to get their people elected. And the last seat is going to be between me, Nick Griffin, and a Muslim Labour. This is exactly the words that he put in the leaflet, which went to every house. And I was really upset. I thought, why you brought my faith into this? Yeah, I'm representing Labour Party. You know, why don't you take me on a political level? But I was so delighted on the night when I won. I remember walking over to Nick Griffin, who was also in the hall in Manchester Town Hall. And I said, you know, Nick, you sent a leaflet to every single house in the Northwest with this message. And the people of the Northwest prefer a Muslim Labour over you. You know, so this is what took me to the European Parliament.
So as
Sorry.
as a Muslim and politicians, obviously there's lots of tensions and difficulties and compromises that you have to overcome.
Yeah.
What was that like, and how did you resolve any internal conflicts that you had?
I think, look, of course, there will be tensions. I think there are tensions even if you're not a Muslim, you know, because at the heart of it, you know, when you're representing, then there are a number of things you have to manage and you have to juggle in, you could say. And the first is yourself, who you are, what your values are, whoever you are. Yeah. The second point is you belong to a party. The system which operates in Britain is a party-based system. So that party will have its own values and its own policies, yeah, and their own decision-making mechanism. And then the third is you represent people, your constituents, and that constituents are made up of different people, different backgrounds, different interests, different religions, yeah, different cultures. So you have to juggle the three. And an ideal situation, I suppose, is when you can carry the three. But sometimes you can't do that. And then I suppose the next situation is being able to carry the two. And then, of course, there may be a case, something you feel very, very strongly about. You just have to carry yourself. But the bottom line is, whichever decision you make, those decisions have consequences, either for yourself, for your party, or for your constituents. So long as you can manage that relationship and then make sort of right decisions, then you will be fine. Of course, there will be people, you know, I was told something earlier on in my political career, that even you make the best decision, you will only carry 80% of the people. So you will get people who will be upset with it.
A lot of pressure and lots of, you know, do you think, you know, the ability to handle pressure is a key characteristics to be a politician?
Of course, pressure is there. Probably part of your temperament has to be able to handle that. And then I think with experience, your skin gets a bit thick as well. That always helps. Because look, it's really difficult because you make a judgment and the information you have, many people wouldn't even have that information, but they still make a judgment and they make a judgment on you. So it is tough and you've got to be strong. And then once you make a decision to hold, but at the same time, I would say you've got to be able to have that flexibility because we're all human. You know, we can all make mistakes. So long as you're not that arrogant that you don't want to even listen to anyone when mistakes are being made, because then you will be in a trouble. You know, because ultimately you have to go back to both with the party to get yourself re-elected, and you have to go to the public to be re-elected. But alhamdulillah, I've been very fortunate, you know, from my whole journey. From very first time when I won a seat from an opposing party, which is always tough. And then every time, every election I've fought, I've been increasing my majority. You know, as in the councillor, ultimately my majority was more than all the councillors vote. So clearly something I was doing right in reaching out to the people and making sure I carry them with me. And then when I became a member of European Parliament, again, it was the highest vote in the UK, the Northwest Labour Party achieved. This was again, which reflected that sort of carrying the vote. When I became an MP, I had the highest vote in the history of Manchester's MPs. And then the second election, I beat my own vote by 2%. So that hard work which Shaukat talked about, I think always pays. And I've always been sort of a person who's available to people. I think that also has an important factor because people end of the day will have problems. You know, this month alone, you know, so those 1,000 people, not every one of them I'll be able to help, but all 1,000 of them know that I tried. And
Okay.
that helps as well.
Let me just take in two questions here. Someone's asked here, do you think luck had been on your side while you were making so many decisions in life?
I don't probably would say, I don't look at luck idea, but I probably say Allah has been kind to me.
Okay.
You can translate that into a luck if you like.
Yeah, and another question someone just asked Saklain, who says, what would you say is your proudest moment so far and your biggest challenge to date?
I suppose proudest one I touched on, I would say one was knocking out Nick Griffin, I think. I really feel proud about that because I think I fundamentally don't like leadership which is based on division. You know, leadership is not easy. You have to make difficult decisions. That's all fine. I have no problem with that. But any politician from whichever party it is who wants to peddle hate, I have no time for them. So in that sense, I felt Nick Griffin, British National Party, was that type of politics, and I have no time for that. And I think probably the other second thing which I would say politically, which probably I feel proud about, is when I was a member of the European Parliament, I was engaged with the recognition of Palestine. And I feel proud that we carried the vote with a huge majority in the European Parliament that we should recognize Palestine. Because I feel two causes which have been all my life with me, and that is Kashmir and Palestine. You know, they are both one of the longest unresolved disputes since the UN. Both of the disputes are over 70 years old. There's a great deal of injustice involved in this. And I feel, you know, there's been really hard done. Palestinians have been really hard done. And more you look at it, you see how systematically Israel has been sort of encroaching their land and how they've been shrinking, how the basic human rights have not been sort of given. And I find it astonishing that the world recognizes Israel, but Israel came out of Palestinian land, but doesn't want to recognize Palestine. So which I think is totally wrong. We should recognize Palestine and then hope and work for a peace. So the Israel and Palestinian can live peacefully. And I think they can. We have a long history of living together. It's not a big deal. It's just some of these politicians, divisional politics, which I think ultimately is holding this back. So getting that resolution through in the European Parliament, I feel really proud.
The second part of that question, what has been the biggest challenge to date so far, would you say?
I think challenges are there every day, isn't it? Because there is so much pressure going around, so much need. But I think it's how you look at it. It's about how do you turn those challenges which are there into opportunities. And that's how I look at it. And I often say this, you know, we're lucky to be born in this day and age. And I say this because if you look around you, look around the world we have, there is so much which is wrong. Yeah. And there is so much that you can do. So any direction you take, you know, whether you want to get into teaching, whether you get to law, or whether you want to become a doctor, whatever profession you take, there is so much that you can do to improve the life of other people. So in that sense, that's how I look at these challenges.
Okay. We're all in this lockdown and COVID era now, yeah? How would you say that the COVID has changed the political landscape in the UK and around the world?
Well, it's incredible, isn't it? This year, when we had the new year, I don't think anyone ever thought we would be where we are. I think this COVID-19 has turned the world upside down. More than 1 million people have lost their lives. Here in Britain ourselves, 42, 43,000, some people talk about 60,000 plus and growing. It's a huge number. So this whole medical aspect of COVID-19 has been incredible, I think. And we're still struggling. We're now looking at coming next week, further restrictions coming in. So we're still struggling with that. The need for vaccination is really so urgent, and I hope we are successful soon. But I think the second thing also has been huge impact economically. And I feel maybe we haven't fully understood the full implication of economic impact. And this may come more apparent in the next 3-4 months, which again is going to be equally huge, I think, not just like the losses on the medical side, but I think economically losses will be equally huge. So I think this has been big. How do I look at it in the political sense? I think it's quite interesting. If you look at the world, different countries have handled this thing differently. And many countries have handled it much better than we have. So I feel disappointed with the current government. And I'm not saying this because I'm Labour and the current government is a Conservative government. But I think if you just look at the death toll, and then if you think about it, that we had NHS, which is a jewel in the crown in public services, globally admired. How come we did so badly? And then if you look at economical impact, again, all the experts are indicating this is going to be huge for Britain, a lot worse than everybody else. So again, I feel something we haven't done right here. And that ultimately has to go back to political decision, has to rest then with the political masters and the current government, how they've handled it. I think they have been poor. I think fundamentally you could argue that this COVID-19 has been new. But look, this has been new for the whole world. It's not just been new for Britain. How come we did so badly with the loss of life? How come we did so badly economically? There is some responsibility here. There is something that we've been failing to learn and hence making mistake. And I feel more I reflect about this. Even now, today, we've written a letter to the Prime Minister, saying what you're doing, hold on a minute, step back, think again what you're doing. But I think the point is that they've been late and then they've been reacting with everything. And the being late then has now consequences with both on the loss of life and economically.
And I think with this COVID, it's not just a UK issue; it's a global issue. And
yes,
and what that means is, what that means is that different countries are at different stages. Where it started off with China and then it was sort of spreading. So that means it's an opportunity for each country to actually learn from another country, because each country is adopting different strategies of, the smart lockdowns, or you go into sort of Sweden and they've not really had a lockdown. So it gives an opportunity for each country to actually learn and adopt different strategies in order to minimize the number of deaths. So
you're just reinforcing my argument, because this is one of my arguments in the sense, we were not at the forefront. China was at the forefront. Some of the Far East countries were at the forefront. Part of Europe, like Italy, was ahead of us in 2-3 weeks. So despite that, why is it that we're in this mess? We should have learned. That's exactly my argument.
Okay, there's two other questions someone just typed in now. Number one, why do we not have more politicians from BAME background? What do you think is the biggest obstacle, and how do we as a community tackle this?
Well, I think if you look at one way, we are getting in the right direction. We're moving in the right direction. Now, how do you overcome that? If you think about my early statement, which I said I went to see Professor Khurshid Ahmed, and he said, we are 20 years late. Now, to me, the lesson then was that I had to let go of my job, because I can't then do it slowly. I have to double my effort to catch up for being late. So in the same sort of analogy, I think here, for as a community, if we think this is important, I think it is, then we need to be more engaged. And if more of us get engaged, then of course the chances are the more of us will be more successful. And the fact that some of us have been now doing this 20, 30 odd years, this is advantage, that some of the mistakes, some of the difficulties, some of those skills which we didn't have, we can very quickly share that. and therefore make their journey easier. So I think more of us need to be engaged. That's the answer, and that will take us to the position. At the moment, you could argue that the number of MPs we've got now from the BME background is the highest we've ever had. So clearly something is happening, but it's still not enough, is the point which is, I think, there for us. So how do we make sure? And that is actually being engaged ourselves more and ultimately keeping the pressure. This whole movement we've seen, the Black Lives Matter, it's important for us as well that, because that means trying to change a system which is not fair. We've seen in COVID-19 how it has had a huge impact on the Black, Asian, ethnic minority communities. Again, it's to do with not that we have a weak gene. That's not the case. It's actually more to do with institutionalized racism, inequalities that exist in the society. So it's in our interest to remove these things, to make it a fair society, which is fair for all. And that way, the whole society is enriched.
We're going to take one more question from our viewers, and then we'll complete some of the questions we have, Professor Ahmed, Shaukat, myself. Now, this question is, how do you balance your faith with certain government policies which may go against your faith?
Well, it's difficult. I already touched on this point. The difficulty ultimately is you have to make decisions. And then what happens is you go through that whole process. And if I can give you just one example, a few months back, we had to make a decision which we all felt uncomfortable, those from the Muslim background. Of course, some others were uncomfortable as well. So we then got ourselves together and we had a meeting, we looked at it and we couldn't resolve the issue. And then we basically brought in some experts who understood the whole fiqh idea and the legislation and various things stand. And we got somebody from Oxford who was one of the leading light in that area. So he came down with us, he spent some time with us. So we then played with the whole argument and things. And then we had to go back and make a decision on it. And then even that decision making, you have to then think about it. Because, you can take a stand. Of course you can, nobody stops you, But when you make a stance, it has a consequences. So in this particular, without going too much into detail, the consequences would have been, we could have taken it one way or the other. So if we took it, say, against, which then means we're keeping our self-integrity in place, then yeah, we've basically then put a marker by saying, well, this is, we don't agree with. But does that mean you'll stop it? The answer is no. And if the answer is no, by you putting a marker, what is it? Well, yes, it gets a message out that X number of people have said no to this, but it doesn't stop actually the legislation. But now what can be the consequences? Well, the consequences would have been, for this particular decision I'm talking about, every single person who was on the front bench, either in the government or in the opposition, would have to resign. Now, what is the loss of all of those people, which I was talking about, 8, 10 people, who had sort of gone to that level of front bench, resigning? What is the loss of that to the community? And what is the loss of that community for that legislation to go through? And is there another way of minimizing that loss? Yes. And then if it is, then you take that decision. So decision making actually is quite complicated. It's very easy, in the comfort of armchair criticism, armchair warriors to make those comments. They can. But in the real life out there, when you make a decision, it has a consequences. That consequences are not only on you, but also on your community. And you have to make a judgment like that. And those judgments then takes you where you then end up.
Can I just ask you, we've got quite a few young listeners live and on Facebook. What advice would you give them if they want to become a politician or prime minister of the country? What skills and personal characteristics and knowledge do you think they would need to develop?
Well, look, my first point would be is I think as a community, we should be engaged in politics. You have no choice, actually. Those people who actually say, I don't care about politics, I have no interest, actually are not being wise at all. Because the fact that you think it's not important doesn't stop people and bringing the legislations in. And those legislation, even when you think it's not important, they are important because you have to follow the law of the land. Yeah. So being engaged is important. Now, engaging can be at different levels. It could be you join a party. I think that's important because by joining a party, one of the benefits you get is you get a direct influence of those who are in the office bearers. You know, whether it's a councillor or it's an MP. MP will listen twice as closely to a member of their party than anyone else because the MP and the councillor knows that the member will decide whether I carry on or I don't carry on. So their own self-interest will dictate that they listen. So being engaged in politics like that is important. Now, if you can become an office bearer, a front elected person, even better. Because think about it, you know, let me give you my example. You know, I was a constituent, yeah. I just followed whatever the law was. I then became a policeman. That meant that I was able to enforce the law. Then I became a solicitor. Now that meant that I could actually defend people if there's been injustice. But now I'm an MP. That means I make law, which is better. Which is better? You know, is it following better? Is it enforcing better? Is it defending better? Or is it making the law better? Of course, making the law is better. And that's why you need to be engaged.
I've got a final two questions before I hand over to Dr. Nasser to wrap up. One is, when it's all said and done, how would you like to be remembered?
I hope people remember that I worked hard to serve people. But you know, one of my ideal people is Qaid-e-Azam. He's an amazing character, amazing history, amazing achievement what he did in such a short time. You know, he changed the whole map of the world. Not many people get that chance in the world, you know, to change the map. He did that. And somebody asked him this sort of question, and it was an interesting reply he gave. He said, I know, kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut, that, you know, there's a death. He said, after death, when I meet my Lord, I want my Lord to say, well done, Jinnah.
Fantastic.
I thought that's a lovely reply.
Fantastic, fantastic. Obviously, over the years, you've gained lots of knowledge and experience and contacts and many things. If you could start from zero, take away everything that you have, and you could keep three things, what would these three things be and why?
Wow, you really are stripping me now, aren't you? I think I would say first one would be probably faith, because I think faith makes you who you are. So I think I would say faith is core of me. Second thing I would say probably family. You know, they are your, like I said to you in the Quran, it says you're committed partners. Yeah, they're committed helpers. You know, they're likely to have good interest of you or you at their heart, in their heart. And the third thing I would say is sabr. Sabr, and probably linked with that, I would say is hikmah, the wisdom idea, which we have. Sabr and hikmah, I think are really, really core qualities. If anyone's got that, you know, you can't put them down.
Okay, I think
Is that okay for the three things?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
I think
wonderful.
we've asked a lot of questions. I just want to end up asking one final question before we wrap up. I'm sure the youngsters who have been watching and listening in, I'm sure they've learned a lot from your experience and from your advice. Now, if somebody wants to go into the politics profession, would you say that being a politician is a lucrative profession? Are the politicians well paid, the councillors, MEPs, MPs? Because it's important for the youngsters to know what they're getting into.
On a lighter note, it depends where you're doing politics. In Britain, let me be very clear. I wouldn't say it's lucrative at all. If I say this to your viewers, that in 2000, I was a partner and I was earning more in 2000 than what I'm earning now as a member of parliament. So 20 years down the road, I'm still earning less what I was earning 20 years ago. So it cannot be for lucrative reasons, actually. I would say if that's what you want, nothing wrong with having good money. If you want to make money, if that's what your wish is, but you can do a lot of good things with money as well. Go and earn money. It's not politics. If you want to serve, politics is the place. There's nothing better. And this is why the Prophet also said that politics is worship. This is how highly it's regarded. So if you want to serve, then politics is the game for you.
And I think if you serve and then you get this satisfaction, which is great.
Well, all I can tell you is I sleep peacefully, honestly, every night.
Okay. My last question, it was really pleasure to be a part of this webinar that, I've learned a lot. As a Muslim politician out there in Muslim world, which leader do you think is likely to serve the community, the Ummah in the right direction, in your opinion?
I think sadly, my attitude about this subject is there is no one perfect, which I accept. Sadly, we have poor leadership in lots of places, actually. I think the resources wise, we have no shortage. What we have been short of is a good leadership. Who are some good leaders now? I would say Malaysian, we had Dr. Moitar. He's pretty good. I think he's got a very experienced, he's done lots of stuff. I think Turkish leadership is also reasonably good. I think our own Imran Khan, his heart is definitely in the right place, I would say. I'm not sure about where his experience is, but that's a different sort of argument. But I think his heart certainly is in the right place. I think there are people like that around who are doing a reasonably good job. But I think the challenges we face are huge. We've seen all around, sadly, in the Arab world, I'm struggling to find some good leadership. It'd be good actually if we had one or two good leaders in the Arab world as well. So you have people in the Asian side, some good leaders which can help and be a role model for other leaders as well. Far East, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc. It's good to have like that. And I think in the Arab world, having somebody, one or two good ones like that would be good as well. But I'm sure if you ask all of them, they all think they'll be brilliant.
Who's your role model? You mentioned Quaid-e-Azam and Nelson Mandela and that, but living, who would you say?
I don't think I would say I have a role model in the living sense. To me, Prophet is the best one. I think it's an amazing. And the reason I say that, not because I'm a Muslim, but I think when I've studied leadership, when I've observed different leadership, what I find amazing about the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is that his means were so little, and the challenge he had was so huge, and the transformation he did in that society, people who were nothing, who were nowhere, nobody was even interested in them, suddenly became the world leaders for so many hundreds and hundreds of years. One of the biggest sort of government you've seen and transformational point of view is him. So he's an amazing achievement on leadership.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Afzal Khan, for your time, for answering the questions. And thank you for everyone for joining. And I'm sure people and the youngsters who have been watching this webinar and the interview will find it very, very beneficial and learn and get motivation from what Dr. Afzal has explained about his life and the obstacles that he faced and how he overcome them and how he succeeded to where he is now in serving the community and the people. And also I'd like to thank those folks who have joined in from the US who are through live Facebook streaming. Dr. Sameer Iqbal and all those people involved in the STEM Matters organization in Texas. Thank you very much. And this live stream with the Facebook, those people who have not been able to join us live today, we will be uploading this video on our Young Professional Society YouTube channel so that people who have not been able to join will have the opportunity to watch this interview. So once again, Dr. Afzal, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.